By the time of writing this video, my episode rankings of each series of classic Thomas and Friends has not yet reached the 5th season. I didn't want to get really burned out making like 3 in a row, so I decided to do something a bit different and talk about an individual episode. Spoilers for my series 5 episode ranking I guess, but Duncan Gets Spooked is by far my favourite episode of the whole show. Well, out of the first 5 series anyway. I don't really know what comes after it. Duncan Gets Spooked is an episode that balances storytelling, visuals, tone, music, and intrigue in such a way that it really stands out amongst the rest. It almost feels like it shouldn't fit. Remember, these were stories about events happening on a busy working railway, with nothing too out of the ordinary. I mean, apart from the talking trains, of course. Of course, there were more out there episodes, especially from Series 3 onwards, but they were still pretty regular, here's what happened today on the railway type of deal, if that makes sense. Series 5 is known for its more bombastic, cinematic stories that took the show in a new direction, with crazy events like an out-of-control boulder, or a whole mine nearly burying Percy. They really wanted to show off what the production team could do by now, and yeah, it was a brilliant series. I've really enjoyed ghost stories ever since I was a kid. Don't want to sound like a crazy person, but I'm honestly open to the existence of the paranormal. Of course there's no real scientific proof of it, but hey, I've had some weird experiences myself, and I find the stories really engrossing, so why not? No harm done. If you couldn't already tell, I'm also a big fan of Thomas. So, naturally, if you couple those things up together, then you've got a recipe for an episode that I would love. Series 2's Ghost Engine was a wonderful episode with really good set design and funny moments. But it never really gave me the same feelings that Duncan Gets Spooked did. That was a more comedic tale without any serious element. Unlike this one. So, the episode begins like any other, with the narrow gauge engines working on the railway. It's all pleasant, setting it up as a perfectly normal day. Peter Sam has an incident involving his trucks breaking loose away from him, doing the usual thing of gleefully rolling away to cause mischief. However, they don't realise that the line has steep bends and a ravine, which this danger sign so helpfully indicates. While crossing an old iron bridge that stretches across the ravine, the silly trucks derail and tip right over the side, plunging into the water below. This establishes ahead of time that this bridge is dangerous, which already gets you thinking. It looked bad for the trucks who fell in there, but what if it happened to an engine? I wonder. I also like how there's no music as the trucks fall. No slide whistle or silly musical cues. Just the sound of breaking metal and splintering wood as the accident happens. Makes it seem a bit more serious, doesn't it? If you look closely, you can actually see the faces of one of the trucks just peeking above the surface. That's kind of unsettling. Peter Sam is reprimanded for the accident, as it was his crew's fault that they didn't secure the trucks properly. Wait, so how is it his fault? I mean, it's not like he has hands or anything, is it? Anyway, Duncan is overjoyed at this, being the little coal stirrer that he is. He tries to make Peter Sam feel even worse by telling him that the trucks will come back to haunt him.
Woo woo woo!
Rusty, being the good friend that he is, steps in and tries to deter Duncan by telling him a ghost story of his own. Long ago, on a moonlit night, a little engine was crossing the old iron bridge. Nobody remembers its name or even what colour its paint was, but we do know that it was an engine very similar to the ones we know today. The engine was returning home after work, the mist rising from the river below, like fingers trying to curl around the bridge. All seemed to be well, until all of a sudden, for reasons we do not know, the engine lost control and slipped over the side. It plunged straight down into the murky depths below, sinking deeper and deeper with its crew still inside. Within a few short moments, the little engine, who had been so close to getting safely home, was lost forever, its name long since forgotten. The only reminder that it ever existed comes from the workmen, who claim to see its ghostly apparition on moonlit nights, trying in vain to make it to the other side so he can get home. But sadly, it never does. Yeah, I may have done my own little version of the tale there, but hey, I like writing, so why not? The narration from Michael Angelis in this scene is on point. He's speaking slowly and calmly enough to let the story sink in, setting the mood just right.
It was a misty, moonlit night. As the engine crossed the old iron bridge, he suddenly lost control and plunged over the side into the swamps below.
I wasn't a huge fan of the way he sounded in most of Series 3, but by this point he'd mastered it. I'd even go as far as saying that Series 4 to 5 Michael Angelis was my favourite narrator of the classics. I'm honestly not sure if I could imagine Ringo pulling this off as well.
He was never found again. But many a workman will tell you that when the moon is full, they have seen the little engine trying to get home, but he never reaches the other side.
Though we only see one set here during the story, 2 if you count the deleted scene, they look great. I love the moonlit backdrop of the iron bridge, with all the mist rising from below. It's incredibly atmospheric. That shot of the engine hitting the swamp as the dark water splashes over it is haunting because, as it falls, You can so briefly make out more details such as a face and the engine's original colour, reminding you that this was in fact once a living, steaming character. The music here is one of Michael Jr.'s best tracks. It's this haunting track that's unlike the usual sort of music you'd hear in the show, with the orchestral part and that little bit that goes dee-doo, dee-doo, dee-doo. Admittedly, I'm not a music guy, so I can't really say too much about this aspect other than, yeah, it's great. Really spooky and also really sad sounding. Duncan just laughs the story off, not believing any of it. Wanting to pay Duncan back, Peter Sam's driver gets an idea to play a trick on Duncan, which Duncan's crew actually agrees to. The next day, Duncan gets busy with his work, his driver intentionally taking him across the bridge as part of the plan. Though he said he didn't believe it, the story still stuck in Duncan's mind, and he couldn't stop thinking about it. He really wants to get back to the shed before it gets too dark, using Scarlowy taking his place as an excuse, but I think we know why. I like that. It's a little thing that's not explicitly explained, but, you know, you can tell what's happening. As the evening wears on, Duncan gets more and more nervous, just as the crew intended. Finally, when night falls, it's time for Duncan to get home, and his return journey takes him across the Iron Bridge, where, according to the story, the engine fell on a night much like this. Suddenly, out of the darkness, Duncan sees something which makes him stop dead in his tracks. There, ahead of him, is the flickering shape of a little engine. We're told that the crews know it's just a bunch of fireflies, but to Duncan, it's the spitting image of what he thinks is the ghost. You could see this as confirmation that it's not real, given the firefly explanation, and the shape is just seen from Duncan's point of view. Or, you could see it as the ghost itself making an appearance. Did the drivers plan on those fireflies appearing? Who knows. Maybe it was all just a coincidence. The next part of the plan involves dropping a rock from Duncan's cab into the ravine below, making a splash that's obviously meant to scare him into thinking that he's actually here in the accident. This plan ends up working out for the crew, and Duncan gets absolutely mortified, retreating back to the safety of the shed with his eyes tightly shut. The episode ends with a humble Duncan, still denying how scared he is, but very, very clearly scared. Not sure how I feel about the whole revenge prank thing, to be honest. I mean, Duncan was just teasing Peter Sam in jest. Not really any harm done. But did they really need to go and traumatize the guy? So, it's never explicitly stated whether or not Rusty's story is actually true or not. Maybe there really was a little engine that met its fate on that bridge, and now haunts the site of its demise. Maybe there was an engine that fell off, but actually got rescued, and then went off to work somewhere else. Maybe the whole thing was just a story made up by Rusty to scare Duncan. The ambiguity keeps the viewer guessing, and leads them to draw their own conclusions. What I think is really clever about this is that it doesn't really leave any impact on the overall world of the show. If you think that Thomas should be more grounded in the realism of railway work like the original stories were, then you can rest easy knowing that this was just some made up tale told by engines. There are no ghosts on Sodor, just engines, people, and ghosts. If you do believe the story is real though, and want more weird supernatural stuff on Sodor, then you can. You're welcome to think so. I mean, Father Christmas exists here, and there are sentient boulders, so why not? There's many different ways you can interpret this episode, and I love it. It's not a big, impactful event on the island like someone falling down a mine or having a big epic chase scene. It's just an engine getting scared one night. No lasting consequences other than those trucks at the start. It does have some implications though. The most notable being that if Rusty's story was true, we just witnessed the first on-screen death of an engine in Thomas. Sure, we've seen scrapped engines all over the place, which is morbid by itself, but actually seeing one fall and drown before our very eyes is just... ugh. The episode doesn't pull any punches. Its tone is wonderfully set. Just because the engines we know always recover from their accidents and get back to work in no time, that doesn't mean it's always like that. For all we know, there's been loads of fatalities in Sodor. Like maybe the fireman and the flying kipper actually died. Maybe another engine had fallen in a mine and actually got buried years before Thomas went down. Maybe an engine drowned in the harbour. This is still a kids show, so of course we're not going to go around showing all this death. But this is still a working railway, along with all the dangers it brings, so, you know, maybe there were plenty of accidents we just didn't see on screen. There's a tone here quite unlike any other we've seen in the show. Duncan Gets Spooked is a fantastic episode of classic Thomas because it hits all the right notes for me and more. There's fun interactions between characters. I love seeing Duncan tease Peter Sam and then having Rusty step in. There's a tone that goes from amusing to somber, with playful elements but also quite serious subject matter. It has really good narration, very eerie and atmospheric sets, coupled with very fitting music. And whether or not you believe the story, a piece of island lore that really gets you thinking about things. If you're totally against the more cinematic, bombastic episode styles of Series 5, when compared to the more grounded episodes of earlier series, then you're welcome to think so. And I'm not sure if I can win you over, but I hope my video was at least interesting for you to watch. If you were already a fan of the episode, then I hope you enjoyed it too, and maybe even saw things in a new light. Thank you for watching. Be sure to leave a comment letting me know what you think of Duncan Gets Spooked. whether it's good or bad, and what you think of the video as well. I could use the feedback. I've got more Thomas stuff coming, as well as video game and some anime stuff, so look forward to that. Thank you for watching and have a great day.